In this video, we're going to bring in a guest who probably has forgotten more about boats than I have learned so far. This guy is incredibly knowledgeable and has been in the industry for a while. It's his business to know about buying and selling and owning boats. So I figured I'd bring him onto the show to answer some of the questions that you guys have been asking us that we just don't have the experience to really answer well. And the individual's name is Gary Fretz. You might have seen his name because he's been doing this for a while. He's been on podcasts and YouTube videos and websites and articles. Like, he's just been around and he knows what he's talking about. His credentials are through the roof. I'll let Gary kind of give his own intro. And we're going to be talking about the costs post-boat purchase. So you see that big number, that's how much you're going to pay for your boat, but then how much is it going to cost after that? We're going to dive into registration fees, taxes, insurance, mooring and dockage fees, import duties. We're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. The video's a little bit longer and it's more like a podcast in video format, but there's really good information here. And so let's just jump on into it.
Hi, I'm Gary Fretz, and I've been a yacht broker and sailing instructor for almost 30 years. I've done over 1,500 deals. I've owned 47 boats and yachts in my charter companies and personally. I think I've probably seen just about everything that can happen, good and bad, and I've made every mistake that you can make. So I think that the best way you can use me is to avoid mistakes, because it's cost me a lot of time and money to figure out the easiest, best way to do anything. And so that's what I have to offer. I can keep you out of trouble, minimize hassles, and save money, because there's a lot of ways to just throw away money in this whole thing.
Yeah, and people who are watching, I'm sure, are very keen not to throw away money. One of the first questions that we do get a lot, specifically about money, is the post-purchase costs. From my point of view, I feel like there's going to be a range. Like, not every person is going to have the same boat purchase costs, depending on your lifestyle, but maybe you've seen different kind of groupings of people and can maybe give some really rough numbers so people can self-identify, being like, oh, I'm that kind of person, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing you have to think about is insurance. And insurance is based on the hull value of your vessel. And the hull value is based on what the surveyor pegs as the value of the boat. And the insurance company will accept a number, usually 20% above or below the number that the surveyor puts on the survey. So let's just say it's a $200,000 boat. You could overinsure it up to $240,000, or you could underinsure it to $160,000. Rates are generally between 1.4, 1.5% to 2% of the declared hull value. So let's just say $200,000 yacht, 2% of that is $4,000 per year, and that would include liability coverage, navigation coverage, and all the usual things. So that's insurance. Okay.
When is that typically paid out? Is that like a one lump sum per year thing, or is it quarterly?
Well, many insurance companies will take, say, 30-40% down and finance the rest, or give you installment payments, like 8 more installment payments if you want to stretch it out. Others want the whole premium in advance. It just differs from company to company. So you can shop around and find out what the various companies will do. You should always deal with a AAA rated or better company, and I can guide you that way. There are some companies that are really bad, like TL Dallas. Don't ever deal with them. They're probably in about 27 lawsuits right now. But just stick with the majors. Pentaneus is a good one. Travelers is a good one. Blue Water Insurance is good, and so on.
And one more question before we go on to registration. Really quick, why would somebody want to overcover or undercover their boat?
Yeah, well, you might want to undercover if you just want to minimize your premiums and ongoing expenses. You may want to overinsure if you really value your boat and what you've put into it, and you have sweat equity in the thing. So you can overinsure. Now, some companies won't let you do that, but there are a few that still will.
Okay, and so and in the scenario where you buy the boat, say for 200,000, and then you put another 20 to 30,000 into it, how do you make sure you don't lose that money? You get a new survey, or like how's that?
What you do is you declare to the insurance company, for example, that you want a hull valuation of $240,000. So they'll say, all right, well, let me see your survey and all of the supporting documents for the add-ons. And so all you do is just scan in or fax them the survey, which they're always going to want to see, plus the document, the receipts for all of the work that was done. So if you added a generator, an air conditioning, whatever, you just send those along with it, and then they'll just take the exact dollar amount of all those pieces of paper that you sent them. So it might come up to some odd number like $237,421, and that's what they'll base your hull value on. And always, by the way, get an agreed upon policy. That means insured and insurer agree upon the value of a total loss, and that's what you're paid exactly when the boat is totaled.
That's insurance. So what's the next cost consideration post-purchase?
Yeah. And so you have to register the vessel somewhere. It's like licensing your car. And depending on how you register the boat, you may be totally tax-free, but that also depends on how you use it. And there's 150,000 yachts registered in the state of Delaware. And these are owned by people from all around the world. And the reason they register there is because it's inexpensive, it's easy and hassle-free to do, and the ongoing carrying costs are minimal. So, for example, if you register state of Delaware, it's about $200 to $250 to form a corporation, because you must have a corporation to do this. And then you register the vessel in the name of the corporation. And that fee varies by size. So a 40-foot boat, I think it's around $85 to do that. So it's really cheap. Now, if you are getting a loan on your yacht, you will have to document it. That's a federal registration. And you can still document it in Delaware, and documentation costs a little bit more. All the fees, including corporations and all the corporate fees, it's about $600 if you document it in Delaware.
And you can do this regardless if it's private use or if you're going to use it for half charter, half your own
sure.
use.
And there are other places you can register your vessel, like you can foreign flag it, and a lot of very wealthy people will flag their vessels in a jurisdiction such as the BVI, Bermuda, Bahamas, Gibraltar, Cayman Islands, Seychelles, Marshall Islands, whatever. And the reason they do it is because in many of those jurisdictions, you can have very private corporations with nominee directors. So you cannot easily discover the beneficial owner of the yacht. And, high profile, high net worth people don't really always want everybody to know that they have this very expensive toy. So that's why they use those registrations. But those can cost 5 to 10 times what a Delaware registration costs.
For perspective, for people who have like no clue, if you didn't go with Delaware, so let's say we're in Texas or people who are in Florida, if you were just going to bring it into the state and register the state, what kind of costs are they looking at for that? Right.
Well, the cost to register a vessel in a state with a state registration, such as Texas, is going to be pretty nominal. Let's say between $100 and $200 usually. However, when you go there and register the vessel, they're going to say, okay, where's our sales and use tax? You're going to go, what? They're going to say, yeah, well, the sales tax in this state is X, and X could be 6%, it could be 8%, it could be more. And then you have to pay sales tax on the vessel if you do that. Now, Delaware is a tax-free state, and that's why you see so many yachts registered there. There are other very low-tax states, too. Rhode Island's tax-free. South Carolina has a flat tax of $300, but They can also get you for personal property tax. It's really complex. I can talk for hours about taxes, but most people elect to go with Delaware because they've streamlined the process. It's cheap, it's quick, it's easy. And even if you want to go back and also register in your home state, you can do that too with a Delaware registration.
So are there any downsides for people? So say we registered Delaware and we wanted to bring the boat back to, in our case, would be Texas. Are there any, like, we have to get out of the state within 90 days, or like, are there restrictions maybe, or at least caveats to the Delaware thing?
Well, every state is different. And in my state of Florida, they enacted some new rules a few years ago to put an end to this Delaware tax exemption that everybody was getting, although there's still a lot of boats that get away with that. So what Florida says, for example, and I think Texas has a similar rule, is that if you're Delaware registered and you come to Florida, for example, and you stay more than 120 days, you are then required to go to an auto tag agent and register the vessel in Florida. Now, if you paid sales or use tax somewhere else and the vessel stayed there for 180 days or more, then you can come into this state tax-free. Many states do the same thing. I'm not sure about Texas. If you did not pay sales and use tax somewhere else and you are coming into Florida and you go to register it because maybe some Marine Patrol policeman told you, you need to go see them because you can't just stay here more than 120 days, they're going to want their sales tax. And the sales tax in Florida is between 6 and 7% per county with a cap of $18,000. So now, but there are strategies you can use to pay no tax, but you have to follow certain rules, and I can go over those for your particular situation. Right. But it all depends on, how you're going to use the boat, where you're going to use it primarily, and how you register it.
Okay, so maybe the takeaway lesson is the best kind of generic one-size-fits-all answer is kind of the Delaware thing. Based on people's particular state and circumstance and use, there could be other ways to mix things together, but that's more of a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I mean, if okay, I'm taking the boat back to Texas, I'm keeping it in Galveston Bay forever and ever, and that's it. I may go on a few side cruises, but it will be based in Texas. Then you really have to plan on registering there, and you'd probably want to document the vessel. That's a federal registration. And the good thing about that is that the Coast Guard keeps track of maritime liens. So when you go to sell the boat, you can get an abstract of title and very quickly know whether there are any liens or encumbrances on the vessel. And it's easier to sell the boat when you get ready to do that. If you can prove, you can say, okay, well, there's no liens. Or I have a first preferred ships mortgage because Essex Credit loaned me some of the money that I needed to buy the boat. And that's one of the benefits of documentation. Another benefit is you become like a federal vessel. And if there is a crime on the vessel in a foreign port, it's like a crime was committed here in the U.S., and the FBI will investigate and will help you get justice no matter where you are. So that's one other good thing. Hopefully you never have to use that. I've never heard of anybody, utilizing that, but it's one of the benefits of federal registration. Then we have taxes. Now, we can talk for a long time about this because the tax rules are so complicated and in some cases ambiguous, and we can go on and on and on. But taxes have to do with how you register the boat and where you will primarily keep it. Like I said, you can minimize your taxes or have no taxes if you arrange your affairs in a certain way. However, if you're going to permanently keep your boat in a U.S. taxing jurisdiction, you're probably going to owe sales and or use tax, whatever it is for that area. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm happy to go through the details with you. Now, there's one other tax that we didn't talk about, and it is the U.S. Customs duty. Now, in 1917, Congress passed a law, it's the Jones Act, and it says that any vessel whose hull was built outside of the U.S., such as in France or England or wherever, if you import the vessel into the U.S., that is, you bring it in permanently for use here, then you must pay the U.S. Customs duty, which is 1.5% of the declared hull value in customs duty, and you must import the vessel. The import fees are about 0.5%. So the whole bill adds up to about 2%. Now, let's just say you bought that $200,000 boat and you want to now bring it into Texas and have it there forever and ever. So you're prepared to pay the duty, which is around probably $4,000. The way they figure it is your surveyor will produce a customs valuation letter. It's usually about $300. And it will say, for purposes of customs valuation, this vessel I hereby say is worth $150,000. Now you might say, "Oh, is that shady? Saying it's worth less than $200,000?" No, because you are allowed to deduct the value of any components on that hull that were produced in the U.S. because that's not taxable. So sails, masts, rigging, electronics, whatever. And he'll figure out what that is and come up with a number. So it's actually not quite as high as you'd think, but you still have to figure about 2% of the appraised value.
And is that due the moment you get into U.S. waters, or like check in, or like
when you come into the U.S., you must begin the process of importation by calling a certified customs broker to begin the work of importing the vessel, and then you're free and clear, you're fine. And the end result is about a month after you start the process, you'll get an importation document that will show what you paid, and you must always keep that in your file, because if you lose it, Customs is not going to do you any favors. They will not look it up. It's too bad, tough luck. You got to do it again. So you're going to need that when you sell the vessel, and that's a valuable piece of paper, because it then means that all subsequent owners don't have to pay it. So yeah, customs duty, sales tax is what we've been talking about. If you go to Europe, they have a value added tax, a VAT, and I have ways to legally be exempt that very few people know about. So those are the main taxes that you have to think about in advance, and the way you arrange your title work can help minimize that. So we want to talk about that early in the game, so we can arrange the affairs to minimize your tax.
Right. I was going to say, with regard to that European V80 VAT tax, is that something you would have to pay if you were planning on purchasing a boat over there and then bringing it back over here?
No.
Okay. That's only if you want to maybe bring a boat back there if you purchased it.
Yeah, if you're going to permanently live on it over there. But you know what? Nobody would really ever practically do that. What they would do as a foreign flag vessel is clear into the European Union. You get a 1-year cruising permit, and so you just use that. And then now at the end of the year, you have to clear out, go to a non-EC country such as Malta, Tunisia, or one of those small islands. Just go over there, sail over there, clear in, stay a couple days, have some fun, go back to the EC, clear back in, get a new cruising permit, and you're good for another year. So that's what everybody does. And you save a lot of money that way, because VAT tax is pretty expensive. It's between 16 and 21.5%. A lot of people want to know how to legally avoid that. And I can show you how to do that.
One more thing about taxes, because this is something seeing if it was a possibility, and I've kind of read similar questions, was if we're going to bring a boat in, the question would be, could we charter it out sometimes, like do sunset cruises, maybe set up an LLC, try to get tax write-offs as a business. From what I've learned since then, it's a lot more complicated if you're living on the boat, but maybe you can speak to that a little bit for other people who are wondering if that's something they could do. Should they just shoot that idea down, or?
I think it makes sense. You know, it helps defray your costs of ownership. And first of all, you have to know that if you're going to charter the vessel and you have a foreign built hull, you need what's called a Jones Act exclusion, which some boats forget about and then they get in trouble later. And it's not complicated or expensive. It's $300 presently, but this is a little known exclusion that you can get in order to do charters. So if you want to do sunset sails or snorkel trips or whatever, you're going to need that if it's a foreign built hull, even if it was imported and duty paid. You know, there's other requirements for chartering in various states. Mm-hmm. And some states have really nothing. You know, they're very laissez-faire, and others are more complex. So it really depends on where you are. You know, if you do it in St. Thomas, you know, Americans can go there and be in business tomorrow because, you know, it's a U.S. territory. So, and there's minimal taxes there. I don't think there's really much of anything. You may need a license, an annual license now. I'm not sure how much it is, but it's a nominal fee. It's maybe $200.
Cool. So if people were considering this as a route, you know, they can get a hold of you and ask you the questions, and there may be things to do.
I mean, I've set a bunch of people up in this business, and so I think I can help save you a lot of time and hassles if you work with me and just tell me that on the front end. Because, you know, if you're going to do charters, you want a boat built for that. You don't want a boat built for, say, you know, live aboard for a big family. That's a different animal than, say, a charter boat or a day charter boat. And so we should talk about everything you're thinking about in advance before you get the boat so that I can guide you to the right thing. Another subject is involved in post-sale expenses, which is dockage and moorage. And, you know, that depends really on where you're going and what time of year. And, you know, I can help you there because dockage varies widely. And in a state like Florida, it can be really expensive for liveaboards in the south part of Florida because the developers have been gobbling up like boatyards and marinas as fast as they can get their hands on them because they can redevelop them into waterfront condos, you know, with docks, but the docks are now for the condo owners. And they won't allow liveaboards anymore. And so we've had marinas disappearing at a huge rate. We probably have half the marinas we had in the year 2000 now. And so prices have gone way up. Now, if you go north of here, like in northern Florida or in the Carolinas, you can find some cheap docks. I mean, I've heard of liveaboard dockage in North Carolina, like in Oriental North Carolina, for like $300, $400 a month, and that includes your electricity and water. Now that is cheap. You know, the Bahamas has some great places, or just anchor out and save your money.
Right. So if you're planning on mooring or docking, you're probably not going to get away with less than, you know, $500 a month at that cheapest price, right?
That's about it. Yeah, $500 to $1,100. It could be higher too in the prime areas. You know, I spent 7 months living on a cat a few summers ago. We had the best time of our lives. It was a brand new Prout 45 4-stateroom 2-head version, and we traveled around New England and New York and the Chesapeake in the summer, and it was beautiful because you wake up in the morning, it's like 60 degrees, you know, it goes up to about 75. It's like natural air conditioning for me. And we stayed in the best places. We stayed in Martha's Vineyard for a month, Nantucket for a month, Buzzards Bay. We went to New York City, stayed in the heart of the city. And we paid about $1,500 for a prime mooring or slip at that time. Now, that was a few years ago, and, you know, prices can go up, and they tend to go up over time. But so we had that expense every month.
That was $1,500 for the month?
That was $1,500 for a month for a prime mooring in one of those prime spots. Or we sometimes found marinas where you can get that price. not in the city centers where there was a lot of population, but we lived in some really great places. And, I'd highly recommend to anyone going to New England in the summer. It's really beautiful.
So you can mitigate your costs by anchoring, obviously.
Right.
And then it's just going to go up from there.
Right. And let me give you a trick that I learned when we were cruising. We didn't have a water maker, so we would need to get water about once a week, and we'd conserve pretty well. So what we would do is we would pull into a fuel dock, usually in a non-busy area, and buy some fuel. And it usually didn't matter how much fuel you bought. I mean, you didn't have to buy like 300 gallons. You could buy 20 gallons or 30 gallons. And then if it's on a Tuesday or a Wednesday when they're not very busy, you just ask the dock guy, hey, would you mind if we went to the grocery and the hardware store, just left the boat here? And sometimes they'll say, yeah, sure, no charge, don't worry about it. Or you just slip them a 5 or a 10. And then you just bought yourself some real cheap dockage. So sometimes they'll even give you free water. So we'd fill up our water tanks. And then sometimes towards the end of the day, we'd go over maybe with a cold beer or something and say, hey, what would it be? And maybe just flash some cash. What would it be to stay here overnight? And sometimes they'd go, if it was a little country town, don't worry about it. Just stay there. Just be out of there by 8 a.m.
Right.
Or just give me $20, And so we would sometimes buy dockage that way. Now this is in little towns generally, out of the way places, not in New York City. And it worked really well for us to use that strategy. It was cheap, it was easy, and we didn't have to have a water maker, and it worked well. Those are the main post-sale expenses that you have to think about.
Is there a good round rough number for the maintenance cost per year for a boat, like based on a percentage or something?
Yeah, well, that's a tough question. Given a particular boat of a certain age, Donald Trump would spend one amount, I would spend another amount, and I have friends that would spend a much lesser amount. So It depends on the person, and it also depends on the type of boat that you buy. And we've talked about how some boats age faster or turn into what I call money pits at a younger age than others, and they will require more maintenance and repairs. But generally, the way you figure it is okay, you really need to do bottom jobs every year, unless you're living in a brackish or freshwater area. Some people can make that last a lot longer by using a very hard bottom paint, and then they'll jump in the water and just, wipe off the slime, and they can stretch that to 2 or 3 years. But generally, you have to plan on a bottom job. It varies by boat length and type, and so I've seen some catamarans get a bottom job for $3,000. I've seen some go for $4,000 and more. It just depends on where you are and what kind of boat you have. So South Florida is like the most expensive place. Some of the islands where the shipyards have a monopoly, they'll charge a high price because they know they can get away with it. But in the rural areas of Florida and Georgia, you can get some really good deals on bottom jobs up there if you just sail up another 200-300 miles north and go out in the country where their pricing is a lot less. Other repairs, you must do the annual service on your diesel and sail drives if you have sail drives. That sometimes must be done when the boat's hauled out. So, you have to factor in that haul out fee. So you would do the bottom and the sail drive servicing all at the same time. And I would just get the engines done at the same time also. You should also, be looking at your running rigging, your standing rigging, the condition of your sails. I know people, some of my friends, who take pride in telling you, I got a 30-year-old sail, and that's good as gold, and they'll take it to the sailmaker and triple stitch it over and over and over and make them last a long time. Would I do that? No. Now, The major charter companies replace the sails every 2.5 years. That's what they say is the proper time to do that. If you're a racer, of course, you replace your sails much more often than if you're just a cruiser. So it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I can usually get 5 years out of a sail easily, maybe longer, by triple stitching it, fixing those chafe holes immediately as soon as you can, because a small hole like that in a storm can become exponentially bigger. So you want to kill those little problems when they're little problems, easy to fix, than when they get to be big monster problems.
So fixing a sail or sail life is kind of measured by like the amount of fray it has. Is that like what's a good indicator that you've got an older sail that is in bad shape versus one that was really well taken care of?
Right. Well, sails, I listen to the sound. A relatively new sail has a sound. It like crackles, and you can tell it's new. And the worst enemy of sailcloth is the sun. And so if somebody has left that sail out in the sun a lot, the sun will damage it and weaken it, and it gets to be like cloth. It won't cringle anymore, and it looks real soft, and they become more susceptible to tears and rips when they get older. So it's a good thing to always zip up your mainsail bag when you're not using those sails. Even if you think the sides of the sail are covered, don't let the sun hit the top of it, because that will age the sail prematurely. And it's just really hard to say what those costs are, because you can defer some of those expenses from one year to the next if you baby the boat, or don't go out in heavy storms and things like that. So let's say we're talking about a $200,000 catamaran. I would say probably $4,000 to $6,000 a year would be adequate for that boat. But like I said, Donald Trump might spend $20,000, $30,000. I have friends that wouldn't spend a dime; they do it all themselves.
Right.
And so they might just spend a few hundred on parts, and they do everything themselves, including the bottom. And there are ways to do that. I hope that answers your question. I don't mean to beat around the bush, but it's just everybody has a different idea of what is proper maintenance. And what you should always tell the surveyor is your intended use. So when you contract with him to do a pre-purchase survey, for example, you should say, here's how I intend to use the boat. I'm going to go around the world, and I need to know what I need on this boat to do that, and what needs to be fixed to accomplish that. And he'll write the whole survey for that purpose. Or if you say, I'm just going to use it on weekends, right around here in Florida, and then he'll write it for that. So you want to tell him your intended use, and he'll work for you and tell you everything you need to know. And these certified surveyors, they're all really good these days. They don't miss that much. They have to go through continuing education like realtors do, and I'm kind of amazed at the consistency and quality of the surveyors that I have seen compared to the old days when we had these old guys that kind of got grandfathered in, and they never really had to pass all the rigorous testing that we have now, and they would miss things in the old days that would surprise you in 6 months. But I've seen a lot less of that lately.
And is it true that one of the key words you said there was certified?
Yeah.
Certified surveyor, because they don't have to be certified, right? There's no laws around that.
Well, in most places, no. So what you want to do, in America, we have two main societies. We have NAMS and SAMS. So SAMS is the Society of American Marine Surveyors, and NAMS is, I think, the National Association of Marine Surveyors, something like that. And so when you're looking for one, you can go on their websites and find one of these certified surveyors, and they're all good. In Europe, there are Bureau Veritas, Germanicus Lloyd's, Lloyd's of London, if you get a good certified surveyor, you're going to be doing well. And you know what? You can bring one with you. I mean, if you know one in the U.S. that you like and you trust, you can bring them. I know people that do that, but it's really expensive because, you got to pay their airfare, hotel, rental car, meals, and it can add up. But on the $1 million yachts and things, a lot of people will bring their favorite surveyor.
And if you're getting a loan, from what I understand, you also have to get a certified surveyor because they want to.
That is a very good point. Now, if you're needing a loan, you need to ask your lender what type of surveyor is required for you. And most North American lenders will require a SAMS or a NAMS surveyor. And so, I've seen some people who, didn't go through me. They went to survey and they got like a, Bureau Veritas surveyor. And then they go to their lender and they say, okay, well, here's my survey, here, because you're going to have to submit it to the lender. And then they go, oh, well, this isn't a SAMS or NAMS surveyor, so we can't accept this. You're going to have to get it resurveyed, and that's not cheap. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a very good question that you brought up.
Are there NAMS and SAMS surveyors kind of worldwide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There are. Yeah. I mean, you see most of them here in North America, the Caribbean, but no, they have them overseas too. They're fewer and far between when you're overseas, but you can find them.
So we're going to do more of these videos with Gary because there's a lot more we could talk about, but that's enough for this video. Gary, if people want to reach out to you and learn more about you, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, thank you. I have a website called largecatamaransforsale.com, and you can see my email address on there, bigyachts@gmail.com, or my cell phone appears on there. Feel free to call, text, email, whatever. And I also have a search engine on there that has access to over 2,000 catamarans that are for sale in the world, so that you can do your searches right there and see the most boats in one place. And I also have a database that goes back to 1998 with all the actual selling prices. So I can, if you said, well, what do Lagoon 42s go for, vintage, 2011 to 2013, I can print you up a list of exact selling prices of all of those boats. And it's a really valuable tool. So yeah, come to my website.
Yeah, and Gary's, he's going to help you out. And well, you're a broker too, right? So if somebody's wanting to buy a boat, they can use you. If they want to sell a boat, they can use you.
Right. That's what I do. And I also own America's oldest sailing school here in Miami, and we can get you certified to American Sailing Association levels. And if you do that, your insurance company is going to really like you a lot more than if you don't.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll have Gary in more of these videos, and in the meantime, if you have any really pressing questions, feel free to reach out to him or put it in the comments of this video and I can relay them. And let us know what other questions you like from somebody with way more experience with this stuff than Jessica and I have. More of the trade secrets and stuff that you need 10 years experience to know. Gary's the guy, he can help out. So throw your questions in the comments. And, let us know if you like this video. So, okay.